What is up, Mouse fam? Welcome back to episode 11 of Podcasting the Mouse. We have one that I've been waiting a very long time for. My good friend, Joel down below has joined us this week. Joel and I have been talking about this for a very long time, so I'm finally happy to get him on the podcast. Before we do that, I have my honorary co-host over here to my left, your guys' right. So, Miss Honorary Co-host, why don't you introduce yourself, and you can let our viewers know where they can find you.
All right, I'm Andrea. On Twitter, I'm at Andrea Jessica. And on Instagram, it's Andrea Runs to DL.
Yes, definitely follow her. Also, I said, Andrea, tell everyone where they can find you, but honestly, if they show up to Disneyland, they're probably going to find you because I feel like you are the easiest person. You and Johnny are the easiest people to find at Disneyland. So if you're at Disneyland at all, you'll probably see Andrea.
She'll find you.
Yes, that's right.
I do that. I'll be like, oh, so-and-so is over here. I just saw their tweet. Let's go find them.
Yes, it's awesome. I love it. Awesome. And our special guest down below, Mr. Tangaroa Joel, as everyone already knows him. Joel, why don't you introduce yourself, although I feel like most of my viewers already know you, and where they can find you on your podcast and on social media.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Joel. I'm at Tangaroa Joel on Twitter. I don't really use my Instagram that much anymore, so I'm going to leave it to that's the best way to find me is on Twitter. And then I do have a podcast with my best friends called Off Harbor in Maine. We have let it lapse a little longer than we would like, but life gets in the way. We definitely we're going to continue on here. Hopefully, I have no plans to end that thing, but you can find it on most podcast streaming services. And we have a lot of fun on there, just talking Disney as well. Sometimes we have some history episodes, and then sometimes we're just kind of joking around, and we try to be authentic and real as possible on there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for those that have watched the podcast, I think episode 6 or 7, last one, Andrea co-host, we had Esplanade Derek, who is also on that podcast. And we actually have plans with Beth and with Matt to bring them on as well. So we're going to basically get the whole Off Harbor and Maine crew on here at one point or another. But yeah, definitely.
And Sean's made an appearance on there too. So Sean's
right.
on,
That's right.
episode 31 or 30.
Yeah. I was about to say, you guys are already on like episode 33. You guys are pretty in deep. So yeah, I think like episode 31 or something I'm on there.
It's been a while now, though. We should be far further with how long ago we started it. But
hey, you guys take lots of breaks, and your viewers always come back. So it's all it's all comes back in the end. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. You guys make sure you follow both of them on Twitter. They are awesome follows, but even better friends. These are two legitimately I feel like I say this every week, but two of my closest friends in the Disney community. So make sure you follow them. They're a great time to hang out with. All right. We are going to start. Topic number 1, as always, is the Disney news. And I feel like the last couple of weeks, there's not been a whole lot of crazy Disney news, and not at least like what we were receiving, all throughout 2021. So nothing crazy, but I just wanted to talk about we're less than a month away by the time this comes out to D23. And last podcast, episode 10, we talked about just generally what we feel like might come. So this week I want to focus a little bit more and hone in on some rumors we've been hearing. I feel like most of the rumors we've been hearing out of Disneyland have been related to Tomorrowland. We had the Scott Trowbridge tweet, and who, for those who don't know, Scott Trowbridge is a Disney Imagineer who's worked on a bunch of great lands. He's done some Universal lands as well, worked on Galaxy's Edge, so really great Imagineer. And he tweeted from Tomorrowland. And we've obviously gotten the People Mover rumors and the Space Mountain rumors, whatever, even if they're just rumors, we've gotten a lot coming out of Tomorrowland. So, Joel, why don't you get us started? Just kind of whatever you want to, what you feel like talking about, but just around Tomorrowland and around the rumors we've been hearing and maybe what we might or might not hear coming up in about 4 weeks at D23.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let me preface on it too, because I feel like for Disneyland as a whole, for once, it feels very complete. Beyond some of the things like a lot of us, I guess I should say, feel like there needs to be some changes at Tomorrowland. But as Disneyland goes proper, I feel like it's very full. There's not like a lot of expansion areas or areas that needs to be added. There's not like blank spaces that are obvious, like, oh, they need to put something in there. It feels really complete, which, we all know Walt's quote. I don't need to even say it, but it feels very complete right now. You look over California Adventure, obviously it needs some improvements and some things added back. A couple of things that I'm hoping for if I'm going to steer away from Tomorrowland for a second, like we need to get a show back in the Hyperion Theater. Yeah. That needs to be announced because it's just silly to have that great theater, air conditioned, sitting empty. So hopefully they announce something. And then I'm not even gonna. I know a lot of people want the Avengers show. I do not think it's smart. I mean, it'd be hilarious the first time. I don't think it would work for in the long run, personally. But and then I'm going to throw one more out there right now. Is we need a new mission for Smuggler's Run. I don't know if they will do that now because, like, think of Tower of Terror. It took them so long until they changed anything. But I think the same goes with here with, not a bride profile, but having a different mission. It was rumored or discussed that that's how it was supposed to be when it first came out. And then we've had the same mission. And a lot of people, it's like hit or miss. Some people love it. Some people hate it and think it's not that great. But I think Smuggler's Run and Galaxy's Edge could really benefit from having that additional mission.
That's really interesting you brought that up, Joel, because I've been talking about D23 the last 3 podcasts now, and that has not come up at all. I just, in my head, thought they're not going to touch Galaxy's Edge because there's so much else to do, but you're absolutely right that was promised a while ago. Maybe not promised, but implied that would be coming a while ago, and would absolutely help that land. I mean, there's so much that would help that land, but that would be the easiest, the cheapest, and potentially the biggest. So I'm all on board for that. As far as, what you said about Tomorrowland, or what you said about Disneyland as a whole, I 100% agree with. I say this all the time. People always say and talk about how Disneyland could be better. And I'm not against that. I talk about it too. Like, Disneyland could be better. It's nowhere near perfect. And like you said, Walt said it'll never be finished. But as far as theme parks go, it is by far the most complete theme park that exists in the world. I mean, not even close. Whether you're talking attractions, whether you're talking shows, whether you're talking history, whatever you're talking, like, Disneyland is complete in that regard. And so, yeah, I don't want any of my viewers or anyone, just talking about this in general, thinking that we're complaining that Tomorrowland sucks or that Tomorrowland needs to be done. It doesn't. Disneyland is, in my opinion, the most, as close to perfect of a theme park you'll ever get. So any changes that do come are just added bonuses. They're just cherries on the pie. And I say the same thing for Animal Kingdom, because I think that park is so great too, that anything that comes is just cherry on top. So yeah, so I'm glad you prefaced that, Joel. Andrea, what are your thoughts on Tomorrowland and what may or may not come?
I think that's just people's wishful thinking about Tomorrowland. I don't see them putting in a ton of time. I would love to see something happen with, like, the Launch Bay area, at least open it again. I mean, they put all that stuff in there, and yeah, maybe it wasn't super popular, but it was a good spot for meet and greets for, characters who don't fit into the Galaxy's Edge timeline, the Star Wars characters who don't fit. But I honestly think the rumors are just wishful thinking. From what I understand, the People Movers got problems with both updating it with OSHA and then ADA compliance. I guess it's going to take a lot of work to get both those things in place, because now that it's been shut down, it's not, it can't go by the rules from whenever it was open till now. You have to update it to the rules for 2022. So yeah. I highly doubt that, especially when they've got, Toontown's about to reopen in 2023. I think they're going to focus on that if they focus on anything.
Plus Tiana, yeah.
Do you think they will not have anything new and maybe just discussing more what's already announced? Or
well, especially when you've got, like, Disneyland Forever on the horizon potentially, I feel like if they're going to talk about anything, it's going to be that. And if they're going to
put forward,
Disneyland Forward. I just don't see them dumping money into Tomorrowland when they want that capital to potentially expand the parks.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
Put that plan into place, or at least announced it or started talking about it. It's already been official, as we're in the beginning planning stages of this thing. So
yeah, I feel like the Disneyland. Sure. I think the Disneyland Forward thing is because there's so much uncertainty around it, because they don't even know if they can do it until it gets approved from the city of Anaheim for the rezoning issues. But I think I don't even think they've planned any capital yet for that. They're just saying, we want to do something with this area if we can, but right now we're not allowed to. So hopefully you will allow it. So we will, start budgeting for it. But I do think for now, I think there are some weak points in Tomorrowland that they can consider. Maybe not a complete remodel, but I do think they've gone to the drawing board so many times with Tomorrowland to figure out a new way. I just don't see how they can continue on for that much longer without doing a complete remodel. Yeah, there's a bunch of wishful thinking. Even myself, I'm blue skying, saying like, "This is what I would love to see in
Yeah,
Tomorrowland," but I know it's not realistic. They don't have the money to do it, or if even they have the money, they're not going to spend it on doing that.
right.
Like the People Mover track, you'd have to put railings across the whole entire thing. No, it's
Right.
not going to happen.
Right.
But I sure would love to
Right.
see it. But
Right.
Yeah.
I
No,
know that's
definitely.
not realistic.
I feel like Tomorrowland and Disneyland Forward, at least in my opinion, is not a question of if, it is a question of when. But I do agree with both of you. I think both of them are. I think the when is way down the road, at least when it comes to a full Tomorrowland remodel and when it comes to any sort of substantial Disneyland Forward progress. But with that being said, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we get small steps. I don't know. I don't think that they want to do Tomorrowland completely, like tear it down and shut that land down for 2 years. I don't think they want to do that. And so maybe they'll do it in phases and maybe we'll get small little Disneyland Forward steps. I mean, it would be pretty easy for them to do anything and just call it part of Disneyland Forward just to get the ball rolling with the city of Anaheim. But I feel like there's a lot of smoke, and I don't think that for sure means there's fire, but surrounding Tomorrowland, there's a lot of smoke right now. Granted, they did just put some good amount of money into the subs, but when it comes to Autopia, when it comes to the Tomorrowland tracks, when it comes to the Launch Bay Carousel Progress building, like there's a lot of smoke there. I don't put any weight to the Lightyear rumors at Space Mountain. That's not any smoke to me at all. But everything else does feel like it's building. So I feel like we might hear something, but I don't know what's something small they could do. Like if they're going to do something, it feels like it has to be big. Oh, and also the other smoke is a Scott Trowbridge tweet. Granted, that could be something not related to Tomorrowland. Like maybe that could be Fantasyland. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
It's hard to say that it really is anything. I mean, it's a weird tweet, and most likely, him posting that would mean that he's working on something for that area, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's even related to what's going to be coming up here. Who knows?
Sure, yeah, it could
He's
be
just at work.
separate. Yeah, it could become separate. I personally think that it's going to be related to something, but it might be something we don't see for 10 years. Or it could be something for Fantasyland. It could be like a small, like that motorboat cruise area. Joel, you said earlier, there's not a whole lot of dead space in the park. And as much as I love sitting in that space, I mean, that's where I first met a bunch of people on this Twitter. Andrea brought me over there, and there's like 20 people there. So that's, that's a great spot, especially for locals, but it's still a dead spot. Disney wants every spot there. So eventually that motorboat cruise area is going to be something. Will that be soon? Will we hear a D23? Who knows? Maybe not. But anyways, so Andrea, you don't think anything's coming. Joel, what do you think? If you had to, so if someone said, give me a percentage of something coming to Tomorrowland at D23, what would you say?
100%. I think there's going to be something for Tomorrowland. I don't think they're going to do a remodel. They could kind of say, we're going to slowly be rolling out new things for Tomorrowland to revitalize the area and we'll talk about this a little bit later. But I think, I of course am hopeful, right? They're going to do something with the Carousel Theater. I'm pretty low percentage wise thinking that that's going to happen for that right now. But I do think something big for Tomorrowland is going to happen. I don't think, Buzz is going to stay. I think Star Tours is going to stay. I think obviously Space is staying. But like, what are we doing with the theater? Like, it's just, there's a lot of things there that's just so odd when you compare it to the rest of the park that's feels whole, right?
Sure. So question for both of you then. What would you say if someone, said you have to answer this question, what would you say is the most likely thing for Tomorrowland here at D23? Like, what do you put at the highest odds of coming? And then second question, what do you hope for the most? So like, maybe this is not super likely, but like, what would you hope they announce the most at D23? Andrea, why don't you start?
I feel like the most like obvious thing is for them to just announce that they're reopening Launch Bay. They just reopened it at Hollywood Studios, right?
Yeah.
Recently. So that is like a little splash, but it's better than nothing. And it doesn't require any extra money, some cast members to staff the store. You maybe throw Darth in there and Chewie. I mean, maybe not anymore because he's in Galaxy's Edge, but I feel like that's the kind of lowest, easiest, doesn't cost them much money. I mean, I would love to see that building rotate again and have something cool in there.
That'd be
Like,
so great.
dude, that's just like when I moved to California, I remember it was still Innoventions and you had to go and stand on the platform and wait for it to rotate for the doors to open. And it was just enough of that carousel of progress that it was just delightful. It's just so cool to see. So that I would love for them to do that. I really think that place would be a great spot for like a similar like idea to like Space 220. To put, especially upstairs, they're already doing the whole fireworks dessert thing. To put like food, a restaurant, maybe wishful thinking, a bar.
That would be great.
If we can have alcohol at Blue Bayou, why not in outer space? So something. I mean, that building's the most obvious to me because it's just not right now. It's not open. It's not doing anything. It's just roped off. So
yeah, that's an interesting answer because obviously a lot of people have been talking about when it comes to what's coming for Tomorrowland. They talk about the launch bay, but 99% of the time it's just, are they going to tear it down or are they not? So it's really interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up, that, it's probably pretty likely. And I think you're right that they might just reopen it and hopefully put something new in there, but maybe just open it up. And I don't want that to happen. I want more, but yeah, it'd be expensive. I think eventually they'll tear it down, but down the road.
Yeah, it's iconic, and it's like the original house for the Carousel of Progress, So I feel like there is that history in there that's pretty cool. And it's a big space, and it's 2 floors, so you could put a ride in there and have a restaurant,
A dark ride for sure.
A lot with that space without tearing down the building. And if you tear down the building, you have to basically wall off that whole section of Tomorrowland. You're gonna have to close the train. So it just gets bigger and bigger if you have to tear down the building versus remodeling on the inside.
Yeah. I am all aboard that plan if they actually do it right. If we get the launch bay that we had before, I mean, it's better than nothing. Like, I'll take it, but I want them to do something more than we had. No offense, but I feel like the launch bay is underutilized with what they did. So if they went your route and put a bar there, which I feel like would get its money back pretty quickly. Chapek likes to say, I'll put money into things if you get my money back. I don't know if they would do a dark ride, but that would be great. But it's something more than they had before, I'd be on board.
And a like bit more upscale, like space themed restaurant totally has a place.
Absolutely.
Disneyland has so much signature dining, and Disneyland just doesn't have that. Like you've got Blue Bayou, and look at how like hard reservations are to get there. And you could do a similar thing. You could have like a space ceiling with stars, and people would flock to it.
I'm all aboard that plan. I don't know if it's coming, but I would love that to be the case. So that's a good one. All right, Joel, what do you think?
Well, I think the obvious one we have not talked about, and I think it's so obvious that no one is even bringing it up. I don't know if you talked about it on a previous podcast, but I think 100% sure we're going to hear about what the treehouse is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So we need to know what the treehouse is going to be. That hasn't been said yet. And beyond the treehouse, I mean, yeah, I don't know anything else for 100% sure. I think you're right. I think they're going to reopen Launch Bay, but I don't think there's going to be any changes. It's going to say, hey, we're going to reopen Launch Bay. Here are some characters that are coming back, or new characters that are going to be in the land. And then eventually, maybe they'll even announce a future plans for the space. But for now, we're going to reopen it because they're not touching that thing anytime soon. I don't think.
Yeah.
And then hopeful thinking, it's not happening, but I want them to announce the Avengers e-ticket attraction. It's just that land needs it. It just doesn't. I think it's disappointing a lot of people.
I don't know if I would personally put it at a 0% chance, Joel. I don't think it's likely, but I don't think it's zero. I mean, are we going to get an opening date and it's for sure coming? No, probably not. But I would not be surprised if they mentioned it at D23. I would probably be around 50-50 that they mention it.
Yeah, I would be surprised if it's announced at all. Obviously, if they did announce it, I don't think they're going to say like, hey, coming in 2024. It's further down the line.
Yeah, but for sure.
I wish they would learn their lesson and not announce things too early too. But that's the Disney way.
I'm trying to figure out. I didn't look up, but what year did they announce Galaxy's Edge?
2015, right?
2015?
Yeah, 2015
so
Expo.
2015, and then it opened 2019.
Mm-hmm. So 4.5 years or 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Regarding the Avengers e-ticket, Joel, and I said this in the last podcast, the reason why I'm pretty bullish on it coming a couple of reasons. One, because Chapek has mentioned it, and Chapek keeps his cards to his chest when it comes to creative stuff. And so the fact that he's mentioned it gets me excited. But the second thing is their research and development, their R&D is already, maybe not 100%, but already done. So they put a lot of money into it. Second of all, they don't have to close anything. Like anytime Disney builds something, they have to close something or wall something off or close the land to build it. They don't even have to close the land off, period. They can build that. It's all backstage space. Number three, they don't have to move that much backstage. There's only one backstage building there, so it'd be pretty easy. And number four is the fact that they've already talked about it. And like, I know I just said this, but like Chapek's already mentioned it. And so I feel like that would be a pretty easy ride for them to build because they don't have to tear anything down. They don't have to close the land down. They've already put a lot of money into it. It's already been announced. And so, yeah, it would be expensive. Yeah, it's going to take them years. But I feel like maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I feel like there's a good chance we hear about it. So, I mean, who knows? Hopefully that's true or not. I think, Joel, you said this. Maybe it's you, Andrew. I don't remember. But one of you said a good point earlier I want to touch on, too, about how, or Joel, it's you were talking about the treehouse. And that's probably the only thing we hear at this D23. And I think that's probably true. I think Disney has huge plans for Disneyland, but I think most of them are long-term. We might hear something about the Fantasyland Theater, and obviously to Andrea's point, Toontown opening up, so I'm sure we'll hear a lot about Toontown.
And Downtown Disney.
And Downtown Disney, for sure. But just for Disneyland proper, like just that park, I think they have big plans. Obviously Tiana's, which we'll hear about that, but they have big plans for Tomorrowland. We already know that. They obviously are at some point are going to do something with the People Mover tracks and with the Autopia, like at some point, who knows when. And so I feel like there's a lot to come with Disneyland, but a lot of it might be down the road. And obviously with Disneyland Forward, they announced an expansion, or not announced, but on that map, there's like an expansion over Disneyland Drive. Will that ever come? Maybe not, but clearly Disney's thinking about it. And so they have a lot for Disneyland, but I think a lot of it's down the road. And I'm fine with that. If they focus on Downtown Disney, like Andrea said, in DCA, maybe we even get some hotel news on Paradise Pier or, the DVC Tower. I'm on board with that because Disneyland, the park itself is, close to perfect, like I already said. So if they want to focus on the other stuff, I'm on board with that.
I think the event's really going to focus on stuff that we've already heard, like the DVC Tower, Paradise Pier Hotel. Did they have a name for it? The Pixar Pier Hotel? Did they name it, or just say it's going to be taken over by? Either way, they're going to talk about the Pixar theme there, and then they're going to revisit areas where they've announced something, but there's not a lot of details to it yet. I'm sure we'll hear more on that.
Like the Toontown.
Yeah.
Right. And to their credit, they don't have a whole lot of capital expenditure right now to just blow, especially at Disneyland that doesn't need it. And so, Chapek announced at a quarter earnings call that they're making more, I don't know the terminology used, but they're making more money off, on a per customer basis than ever before, thanks to Genie and everything. So I would ideally wish that they would then put that back into the parks, but I know that they bled a lot throughout 2020 and 2021. So I don't want to get my hopes up too high, but I think you're right, Joel. We're probably going to hear, obviously Tiana, Toontown, the Pixar Pier Hotel, maybe the Avengers e-ticket. Like, there's a lot that they can touch on. And so will they just touch on stuff? Probably. Will they send us a curveball? I do think that we will get a curveball, but who knows what it'll be. Treehouse, again, to your point earlier. So what else? You guys got any other thoughts on that, or are we good?
I think we're good.
Sounds great. Well, it'll be really fun to revisit this conversation in about 4 weeks once we
when we're all wrong.
Yeah, we'll see how wrong we were. We can go back and grade ourselves. But anyways, very interesting. So we'll see what happens. All right. With that being said, this is kind of going to be a very easy transition, but hopping into topic number 2 is our good, bad, and great. And as my viewers know, normally this is a land that the guest of choice absolutely loves. Joel gets the short end of the stick this week because we are choosing a land that he does not absolutely love. In fact, Joel makes this land a butt of a lot of his jokes. But we are talking about Tomorrowland, which we just talked about a lot for topic number 1. So we're going to share our good, bad, and great of Tomorrowland. We're not, we can touch on it, but we're not talking about the future of Tomorrowland. We are going to talk about the Tomorrowland that we have right now. So, if you're watching this in a year and Tomorrowland's changed, sorry, we're talking about Tomorrowland as of, 2022. So, so with that being started, we can start with our good. So we'll do good, bad, then great. So Joel, you can get us started as a guest of honor. What is your good of Tomorrowland?
The good for Tomorrowland is clearly the current choice of attractions that aren't shuttered. So to me, there's a lot of solid B+ attractions. Like even if they're a C ticket or D ticket, like Buzz, Buzz Lightyear is a solid attraction. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's very popular. It does very well. Like Matt, who's on our podcast, I think it's his favorite ride. So it's definitely still very popular. And then Star Tours for me is one of my, it's like top 4 maybe for me. I used to not care for it, but since they had the new additions to it and the different choices of randomized locations, it's turned into something I really love. Although it doesn't have huge weights, which maybe that's another reason why I like it, because it's easy for me to get on.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, I mean, there's other attractions, and we'll speak to Space. You know, Space Mountain's always obviously a good, if not great, attraction. There's a lot of good stuff there.
Fantastic. Yeah, 100% agree. Andrea?
I was a little bit more specific, and I said the good is Buzz Lightyear. It is one of my probably, well, they keep coming out with rides that I like more, but it is one of my favorites, that's for sure, because it's got such rewrite ability. For somebody who goes a lot, like I'm always trying to outdo my best scores or trying to, like figure out the guns a little bit better, come up with better techniques. And, the music's great. It's got all the fun lights and stuff, and it's good for little kids, it's good for big kids, it's good for adults who are just big kids. So I really love Buzz. It does need a little TLC. It's looking a little worn around the edges these days. But, I mean, it's a workhorse. I can't remember them ever shutting it down for any type of refurbishment. Maybe a day or two here, but it's never undergone since I've been out here for like 16, 17 years, a major refurbishment. So it's pretty, it's a people eater. I think it's really solid.
That's really funny. You guys both touched on Buzz and you're good, because I actually am on record. I don't really like Buzz. I don't think it's that great of an attraction. But hearing you guys talk about it, you got me. There's a lot of pros to that ride, I will say. Andrea's ride is a workhorse. It's a people eater. I don't like the scoring system. Maybe that's especially because of Toy Story Mania and Web being better, but it's good as a dark ride. Like, even if you're not shooting, it's a pretty solid dark ride, and it's way better than the Magic Kingdom version. So yeah, I'll give you guys that. It's got a lot going for it. I don't love the thematic fit, but in terms of it being a people eater and a great, little omnimover, you guys are right. It's got a lot going for it. So you won me over. Good job. But my good is of Tomorrowland is the kinetic energy. I think kinetic energy is one of the most underrated aspects to any theme park in the world. And I don't just mean roller coasters. I mean, I guess that does work as a form of kinetic energy, but it's a pretty, simple version. But just the kinetic energy that between the Astro Orbiter and just, I mean, I don't know. It just Autopia. I don't even like Autopia, but the subs going around, the Disneyland Railroad. I know the Disneyland Railroad is like at the back part of Tomorrowland, but that's one of my favorite parts of Tomorrowland because it's just so hidden. So the monorail going by. Unfortunately, we don't have the people mover anymore, but even without the people mover, the monorail, the railroad, the subs being back up, like there's just so much kinetic energy. And so whether or not all of it works, like I'm not sure the Astro Orbiter works at the front of the land, it's still fun kinetic energy, and it makes you feel like the land is alive. And so, I just love that part of Tomorrowland. I have a lot of negatives about Tomorrowland, but it definitely feels alive. And they don't have it going now, but the Jedi Training Academy sometimes going. Anytime you go to a hard ticket event, they always have some sort of party in Tomorrowland, and so that adds to it. And so, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of good kinetic energy in this land.
They have
all right, those are goods. Oh, sorry, Andrea, go ahead.
No, they have a party right now, but I forgot what it is. And it's different. They have the Pixar party at the stage during the summer, and now it's something different. But
as long as it's not that grad night, as long as we're not doing grad night post events, I'm down for whatever else. All right, we'll get a little bit negative here. We're going to try not to be too harsh here because Joel and I are a little bit harder on Tomorrowland. I think Andrea likes it, Joel hates it, and I dislike it. So we're all in different spots on it, but we'll get a little negative. Joel, don't go too hard, but what is your bad of Tomorrowland?
I think my bad is rooted from being there and coming to the park. I wasn't local at the time, but coming down when they're redoing for Tomorrowland 98 and then seeing a completely cohesive, solid, even though it was brought down to the budget cuts and everything, there's definitely issues with Tomorrowland 98 for obvious reasons, like Rocket Rots, but it was everything matched. It had a general style and theme through the whole land that it all worked and flowed, in my opinion, together. Where now, over time, and especially after I moved here, like, oh, let's start painting everything blue. You know what? Let's change that whole wall to blue. Let's paint that blue and let's paint everything else blue. Let's add a little silver and some blue. And then, so I felt like they're like, oh, well, when you start painting everything, it's a different color, even though the other color was themed to the whole Jules Verne idea. I was okay with them painting, of course, the brown Space Mountain back to white. But I just felt like as that started happening, and then you're losing certain attractions, the cohesive storyline or idea of what Tomorrowland is was, to me, lost. Like how we talked with Buzz Lightyear, it's a good ride on its own, in my opinion, but it doesn't fit, I would say, the narrative or the idea of what Tomorrowland is all about. And so now that you're losing that cohesive feeling of what the land is about, and then you also have just empty areas and attractions not open, like the theater's closed, the carousel theater, whatever you want to call it, is also closed. I'm sure it's going to come back in some form, but it's just an empty shell right now.
Man, I forgot about the theater. You're right.
I did too. I was thinking
the last thing I was playing was like the Star Wars, Path of the Jedi.
Path of the Jedi for a really long time.
I'm glad you brought that up, Joe. I forgot about that completely.
Yeah, it just sits there. And see, this is where I'm a little jaded, because even though I didn't go to Disneyland when it used to be in its former form, where it was an open air theater, just seeing some of these old pictures and not reminiscing, but looking over what it used to be and how awesome it was. Like there was the space, what was it called? The space pad. Oh shoot, I forget the landing pad. Shoot, I forgot the name of
it's
the old restaurant.
I don't remember what it used to be called.
The space shoot, someone's gonna write it in the comments. I forgot what it is. But anyways, it was up where the Fast Pass area is for Space Mountain, or was. That old Fast Pass area for Space Mountain was the window for a quick service restaurant. And then you could take that up the current queue for Space Mountain, but that's not where the queue was. You would take that up, and there was balcony seating that went around, which is now the queue, and it would look into the theater because there was no roof there. You could look right into the theater. Just a really good vibe. What, Andrea?
That's cool. I didn't know.
That's incredible. Yeah.
It's and then going along with like the whole bad thing and things kind of being left and kind of forgotten about. We didn't even talk about, hey, we do have a giant track that just sits through the middle of the land. It just sits empty.
I've never seen that. I don't know what you're
staring at me. Yeah, it's just staring at us. But even if you're in line for Space Mountain, and most people don't see this, and the common parko has no idea this exists. But if you're standing up there, if you look up to the top of the roof line of the side buildings, there's a bunch of metal posts that come down on both sides, and those used to hold a wire that would go across, and it was a canopy for some shade for the outdoor stage. Well, the metal posts are still there. That thing's been gone for decades. It's just those remnants of the past that are still there. I'm like, oh, there is so much history and cool stuff here at Tomorrowland that now we just decided to we're going to cover up the roof and have a queue up here, and you lose that escalator going up. I'm sure there's logistical reasons, and I can support that. But anyways, I'll end it there.
But I really quick, sorry, Andrea, but to cut you off before you go, but this was my bad, but I'm going to change it now that you brought it up, Joel. So I just wanted to touch on it really quick because it was my bad originally. And you touched on this a little bit, but it's so obvious and clear when you're walking through Tomorrowland that something is, I guess something's wrong, for lack of a better term. Like, especially when you're in Space Mountain, it's so very clear that that's not all it's supposed to be. And I mean, you have the Starcade that's empty. You have the theater, to your point, that's empty. You have that whole walkway and now the Fast Pass area that is not being used at all. That's completely empty. You have the Carousel Progress building that right now is completely empty. To Andrew's point earlier, they might open it up, but still empty. And so you can just tell. And the Jedi Training Academy, that theater empty right now. And so even the subs, which thank gosh they finally reopened, but even those were down for 2 years. And so they're just so clearly, and that's not even accounting for the People Mover tracks, which, really quick off note, when you're standing in line for the monorail at the Tomorrowland station and you're just staring at the tracks with bushes on them, it's like, what? How did and then on top of that, when you watch Imagineering Story and you have the episode of is it Joe Rohde? I think it's Joe Rohde, just legitimately just moving pieces around in the Tomorrowland.
Oh yeah, where he's picking up the carousel theater. Yeah.
Yeah, and then on top of that, all the rumors and the Scott Trowbridge thing, we've never seen, at least in my 10, 15 years of Disney fandom, we have never seen this level of just blatant, I don't even know the word, just blatant not caring for a land. And so clearly Disney knows that, judging by the Imagineering story episode and everything going on. And so I think even Joe Rohde's even gone on record saying like they need to tear it down or do something big. And so sorry to steal the thunder. This is not my bad, but I just wanted to touch on, Joel, how obvious it is when you're at Space Mountain that there's like 5 different things that should be open right now. The Starcade being one of the worst in the theater, to your point. But all right. Anyways, sorry, Andrea.
No, you're good. You're good. I had forgotten about the theater being empty, but now that you said that, I'm sad. Actually, Joel, what you said, like, I know we've argued about Tomorrowland, but that makes sense. Like, I didn't understand why you were so down on it, but that makes sense because you were from that era. Like me coming in 2005-ish, it's got just enough of those hints of the past that it gives me that nostalgia vibe, but it still seems cool and spacey, Yeah. So I think because it hasn't really changed that much since I moved to California and became a regular, that's probably why I still have like warm fuzzies for Tomorrowland and you don't, which makes complete sense because I feel that way for so many other things and around the resort where I'm like, oh, I wish that hadn't changed.
I cannot wait to talk to Andrew on this podcast when they change Paradise Pier to Pixar Pier. Oh, it's gonna be such a good combo.
I think I'm busy that day. So for my bad, I just put like empty and I put Innoventions because I think to me that's the biggest glaring. Like you've got this giant building, and I remember going in there when it was still like Innoventions E stuff and that they had all the house stuff. Like I remember that stuff pretty vaguely from my first time here, but now also I'm thinking of the theater, I was so excited when Captain EO came back. I was never a Honey, I Shrunk the Audience fan, but when Captain EO came back, because I remember being a child at Epcot seeing that, and that was so exciting. And that theater was, it wasn't full, but it was decently full all the times I went in for Captain EO, and that pulls people out of the rides. Both of those things, and the People Mover track just bums me out. It's like it just, and even I think that the fact that they moved the Astro Orbiter down, when you see it, right. And some of this is just comparison as an adult going to Disney World, seeing it up high, it's so cool. It gives that, and that whatever that sculpture is in the middle, that used to move, right?
Right.
Yeah, the Observatron.
Now it looks like a broken junk.
Orbitron or Observatron? I think it's Observatron.
Yeah. And that I remember moving and stuff. So
do you want to know the history of the Observatron and how it spun every 15 minutes and it would play Walt's speech, radio transmissions. This is how they built it. Who knows? They really did it. But it was supposed to play the radio transmission of Walt's speech into space. So eventually somebody will hear it light years away. Right.
I had no clue that was the case.
That's so cool.
It's probably in like 1998, press releases and stuff. But that is what it was meant to be.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's so cool. So I think it's just that stuff that even the space that they've used for what did they use it for last? Like 8-piece stuff that what used to be the arcade is just a room that they use sometimes, like the arcade was cool. I remember, just like wandering through there and there's all those spaces that just kind of bummed me out.
Here's how cool the Starcade is. It's so cool, even though it's closed and no way ever coming back and used for store. Like they completely walled that thing off. Like it's a permanent wall. Right. It's so cool that they kept the sign up.
Yeah,
the sign is still there.
Great. Yeah. No, for sure. That's criminal. Andrew, it's funny you said empty, and you and I, until Joel said it, both had completely forgot about the theater. So it just doubles down on your, your emptiness.
Yeah, I was mainly
thinking about
sure. But
yeah. I feel like the People Mover tracks are the obvious, that everyone knows about, and obviously the Innoventions building. But the Starcade and the theater get untalked about, and just how crazy it is that something that iconic to old school Disneyland is just empty and no plans for it. So, all right, and down in the comments, please let us know. Do you call it the Carousel Progress Building or the Innoventions Building, or do you call it Launch Bay, or do you call it random AP?
The American Sings Building.
Or American Sings. Let us know down in the comments what you call it. But yeah, my bad. Like I said earlier, was what Joel said, so I'll switch it up. My bad is just I'm really against when lands are just all concrete and like just they look like a parking lot. Like that's just really annoying to me. And like that's why I don't like, no offense to viewers out there, but I don't like Six Flags parks that much because I don't want to walk on a parking lot. Like that's why I hate Dino-Rama so much. And so Tomorrowland just feels like that. It's nice that they have the little, I don't know what they call it, but the little ball that spins on the water, like that helps it out a bit. But they just need more foliage. It's just too much of a parking lot, and that really bugs me. And I don't like that at all. And then you add the tracks going down the middle, and it just feels like a parking lot. And so I'm not a fan of that at all. So that's my bad. A lot of negativity. I'm sure Joel and I could keep going with more, but we will get onto the great, because believe it or not, there is some great to be had at the current Tomorrowland. So Joel, why don't you get us started? What is your great of Tomorrowland?
But we didn't even talk about the backside of Buzz Lightyear. Now there's no theming whatsoever. Anyway, we'll move on to the great. Sorry. I just broke something underneath my desk here. Sorry. 1 second here. Anyway.
Getting too upset, Joel.
Yeah. Hidden things over here. All right. No, the great, I could go with the obvious and say Space Mountain is great, even though I would argue that a new teenager, let's say if you're a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old going to Space Mountain today, first time to Disneyland to go in space, you're probably not going to have that same feeling that maybe you had in like the 90s when you were going to Space Mountain as a 12 or 13-year-old, just because of how everything has advanced. And yeah, they've done some upgrades, but I don't know if it levels up to what it was like in the early 90s. But I'm going to change things up and kind of go on a broader theme and just say, look, what's great about Tomorrowland in general, and why I never want them to get rid of the idea of having a Tomorrowland, is that if you do it right, it gives you the promise of tomorrow. You know, it gives you you can be optimistic about the future, and it's something that as a society we don't have today. So it's not like we were in the 50s and 60s and just thinking about the future and how we're going to be better as humankind and all this stuff we can do. Tomorrowland brings those themes back. If you just look at the movie and kind of what that's supposed to talk about too, is being optimistic about the future and creating a better tomorrow. So hopefully it can get back to that spot, and the opportunity's there.
Joel's getting emotional here, man.
I know, that was so deep.
And Joel, to your point, Joel, Walt Disney himself didn't really care about Tomorrowland too much in terms of putting stuff there. So hey, we're sticking with what Walt wanted, who really knows the theme. Now all we need to do to really bring home Walt is to just start throwing sponsors everywhere, and Tomorrowland will be just like it was in the 50s.
Yeah. Hey, Tomorrowland originally was all about science and science fact, right? Opposed to now being a futuristic, the tomorrow that never was, or that never will be, whatever, Florida,
It just feels like the current Tomorrowland, they've ran out of money, or they don't have the money to fix it. And that, ironically enough, is what plagued original Tomorrowland. Is Walt's budget was, by the time he got Tomorrowland, was already done. And so,
So it's on.
Anyways, but I do agree 100% with what you said, Joel. Like, the ideals and just the fact that it's an original Walt land, like that's huge kudos to Tomorrowland. So good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
All right, my turn.
Yep.
Okay, so my great was basically Space Mountain, but I think I'm gonna also broaden that out. And to me, it's just the aesthetics of the whole land, which goes against exactly what Sean just said. But it's especially at nighttime. It's the neon, agreed. It's the lighting. It's just like that when you're standing up in the queue for Space Mountain, looking over the land and just seeing all the different lights and that stuff. And I just really love, even if it's old, I love that like 80s, 90s futuristic aesthetic vibe. I love it's so silly. I love the eating area for Pizza Planet that's outside in the Space Mountain queue. I love that. I love the little area that you go into the theater. It's got that like 90s space vibe, and I just and mall vibe also, which I really love. And that's probably my nostalgia. From just like that part feels to me like what I remember when I visited Disney World when I was little. Like that specific area feels so much like those 80s, 90s vibes from Disney. And I just love that. But I think it's also, like Interventions looks really cool at night, even if there's nothing inside. It's a nice nighttime ride on Autopia is awesome. It's especially the nighttime vibes of Tomorrowland. The new walls in front look really cool at night. It's the neon in the land. It's just
No, for sure. You're right. You're right, Andrea. And even like the nighttime tickets, which I touched on earlier, like Tomorrowland's fun during those events, like Sweethearts Night and like
Yeah.
the Christmas, like they like when they had the Buzz DJ out there and then they had like a dance party for the Sweethearts Night and like they just do a good job for the parties at night. So I agree with you there. And to your a point about the like the 90s mall, when you're in the exiting Space Mountain, you're like that indoor area and then you just walk out and you're all of a sudden outdoors. That's pretty cool. I won't lie. I like that
so much. Yeah.
Yeah. And the new entrance and the new walls they did. I think the walls on is it by Star Tours or Buzz? They did like a new wall there.
On both sides.
That's a great move. The fact that the rocks, the French fry rocks, were there as long as they were, is literally criminal and so confusing to me. So I'm glad they changed that up.
Yeah, it's true. I'm particularly attached to them, but now that it's wide open, it just seems so much more wide open and inviting.
Yeah, it's weird that they were there for that long, but that's another topic for another day. Anyways, my great for Tomorrowland is the fact that it's a people eater and the fact that it seems to bring a lot of hype and people just love it. Like no matter when you're walking through Tomorrowland, and maybe this is because it's so cramped in there, but it just feels like there's a bunch of people there and like everyone's excited going to Space Mountain. And if you have a rope drop and go to Space Mountain, like the energy is really cool. And it is a people eater. I mean, you have the monorail and the railroad and Autopia and the subs, which say what you want about the subs. That queue eats kids. So for those adults that say they don't like the subs, bro, you understand how many kids go in that line and don't come out for an hour? So keep the subs for that reason. And Buzz is a great people eater. Star Tours eats people, Space Mountain. So yeah, I mean, I don't like where it's at right now, but there's no denying that it gets people hyped and it has a lot of people eating attractions. And so that's what I love about Tomorrowland. All right, Andrew and Joel, thank you so much. You guys can listen to the comments. What was your good, bad, and great? What do you think overall about Tomorrowland? That brings us to our third topic, and that third topic is our ranking topic, our top 5. For those that don't know Joel, although I'm sure if you follow him on Twitter, you probably know this already, Joel is a true diehard, a true believer, if you will, with rope dropping Disneyland. And rope dropping Disneyland Park specifically. I don't mean rope dropping theme parks. I don't mean rope dropping Walt Disney World. I don't even mean rope dropping DCA. Rope dropping Disneyland. That is Joel's go-to as long as he makes the right reservations. So
yeah.
With that being said, we are going to rank our top 5 best things to do at rope dropping. So we're not going to talk, top 5 things to do, or like top 5 reasons, because obviously the reasons: beat the crowds, beat the heat. So we're going to do top 5 things, specifically things to do when you rope drop Disneyland. With that being said, Joel, as the resident, guru of rope dropping, you can get us started. What is your number 5?
So I have a lot of things on top 5 because you can shoot me down and say we don't have enough time or we can't do this, but I do have, just so you're aware, I have a top 5 things to do at rope drop. Like if you're not first time, but like don't go to Disneyland all the time, or you're on vacation and it's your day 1 or maybe your second day. Then I have a leisure top 5. So just throwing it out there for maybe to discuss later.
Do both.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, do both. I kind of, for my list, I kind of did both. I kind of looked at it from both ways and added both. So yeah, I mean, go ahead if you want to share 2 for, each one as we go. That's totally up to you.
Well, I'll start. I have to say here, thanks, Sean, for explaining how much I enjoy going for rope drop. Part of it is, I have young toddlers at home. They're twins. They're 18 months. That was one reason to go early in the morning because it's easier to leave and not go there when it's busier. It starts getting busy at 11:30 and I'm already 11:30 a.m. and already like, okay, time to go. But also I'm just really big on when we talk about park opening, I do have to state that we are not saying getting there at 8 a.m. Mm-hmm. When I'm saying about rope dropping, it means you are at the front gate by like 7:30 or so, and you're in the park by 8. And I'm telling you this, and this is really important for anyone that's considering, it really wants some inside info right now. If you want to go and you're let's say you're local, you get there at 7:30. It's key. 7:30-ish is a great time to show up at the parking lot structure. But if you get there 5 minutes later, 10 minutes, it's 7:40, 7:45, then the line starts showing up. But if you get there at 7:30 or before, there's no security lines. There's no lines to get into the park. Like I'm talking like 2 people deep, and then you go right into the park.
I would mention too, though, that now that this summer early magic hours are coming back, I might push that up a tiny bit because I 100% agree that's been true since 2020. But with the early park admission for the the hotel guests coming back, I might push that up a tiny bit.
That's a good point. And that does change some of our like top fives, or at least for me, on what you could do and not really have to worry about the guests that are already in the park because of the early entry. It's only 30 minutes now, right? But they do have some early entries, so that does change things up a little bit. Just keep that in mind.
Sure. I think before, I don't know if this is still true, but correct me if I'm wrong. Before for Disneyland, it was only Fantasyland and Tomorrowland, I think, and I think that's still true. And for DCA, it was only Cars Land, and I don't think it was Pixar Pier. I think it was just Cars Land and Grizzly and stuff. So that might not be the case. Don't write that down, but I'm pretty sure it's only part of the parks. So
we should look that up. I may look that up while we're doing this, but I think it's increased. I could be wrong, but I think it's not just that anymore. I think Frontierland is open and like Thunder and stuff, but I could be incorrect. And now a lot of people are going to say for opening, like, well, of course, the first thing you can do is run on over to Rise of the Resistance. And I'm going to tell you, I do not believe in going to Galaxy's Edge first.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And we'll talk it out, but Galaxy's Edge, I do not say go to Rise of the Resistance first, or even to Smuggler's Run even first. And the key point here is if you rush over to Rise of the Resistance, it could still be a decent long wait. It could still be 60 minutes plus, maybe 45 minutes, but you are erasing the chance of riding like 5 rides within an hour if you are a ride person. If you are there about going on rides, this is your opportunity to get the big rides out of the way. And maybe I'm saying, yeah, you're going to want to rush a little bit. I know a lot of people don't want to rush on their vacation, but why I like the rope dropping is you can rush a lot at the very beginning, maybe from 8 to 9 or the first 2 hours. And then as it starts to get busier and everything else, then that's when you can start to be a little slower with your day. You can leisure and not stress. And when it starts to get hot, you're not worried about standing in long waits in the sun or in the heat. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So number 1 for me, though, besides don't go to Galaxy's Edge, would be, and this is an old school.
Wait, hold up, Joel. Sorry, is this your top reason, or are you starting from the bottom?
Oh, do you want me to stop?
Yeah,
I don't really have them ranked.
It's not. This is not. This is a more broad topic, so it doesn't have to be ranked. But normally,
okay, I'll go with number 5. I'll go with number 5. We'll start at the bottom, like your normal ranking. So number 5, I would say go to Space Mountain first. Yeah, so you go straight to space, but everything kind of comes with something. You're going to space so you can quickly grab that breakfast burrito from Galactic Grill.
Wow.
Yeah. There's never a line for Galactic Grill in the morning. I've done it many times.
Yes.
So you can get your burrito very quick. It's an American breakfast burrito, classic, everything you would want in a breakfast burrito, and it's good for on the go. So you can take it to wherever you're going next. So you're not wasting too much time. And then you can start from space. You can start going like the Matterhorn route, or and going that way towards Frontierland.
I like the curveball. That's fantastic.
That's 5.
Awesome, love it. All right, Andrea, number 5 for you.
All right. Well, first I have to preface it with saying I've rope dropped like 3 times ever, and at least 2 of my rope drops were only to get Rise of the Resistance boarding groups back when there were boarding.
Oh yeah, and that was a different era.
That was the worst. That was the worst.
You had to rope drop. You had another option.
So I have no experience. I did show up with the reopening day at like 8 in the morning and did a bunch of stuff, but that was a little bit different because it was pretty low capacity. So I put number 5 was Rise, because I was like, hey, if I'm gonna get there that early, I'm gonna head back to Rise, because I don't ride it very often because I don't want to wait in that line.
Fair.
But it is a long walk back there, so that would be my biggest hesitation. It would have to be a day that I'm like, I'm going to ride Rise of the Resistance, and that's my purpose for being here early.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're a tourist and Rise is your number 1 to-do list, which let's be honest, if you haven't been to Disneyland in a while, Rise should be. It's not the most reliable ride in the world, and it closes early. So normally I would be on Joel's side and say I don't recommend going to Rise because it's at the back of the park, because it has a stable line all day. Like you can go to 5 p.m. and it's going to be an hour, and it's going to be an hour right when you get there. But to Andrew's point, if you're a tourist, that ride is not the most reliable, so you should go right there right away if you really like Rise. And especially if
The
you're
other point is, if you're in the back of the park, then you can work your way forward. Those lines in the back of the park are going to be the shortest after you.
Yeah. And 99% of the time, the best theme park tip, especially at like Universal Hollywood or even DCA, go back and then come forward.
Yeah,
and that's true at Disneyland, but Rise is different because it's so popular. But
yeah.
anyways, yeah, if you're a tourist, go there. So
can I build off of that then? Because that's my number 4, right? Is start in the back and work your way forward, right? So
okay.
Especially like on a hot day or something, then maybe go with Splash first, and then you go backwards towards Mansion to Pirates to Thunder, boom.
Yeah.
Or check on like Indy and some other things right there, and maybe you want to skip Pirates because Pirates can be a lot longer in the morning than in the afternoon.
That's a good night ride.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're talking about ties into my 5, Joel. So that's good. So my 5, and just a quick preface. I don't, we're already high on time, so I don't want to keep you guys too long. But Andrea and Joel are locals. Joel has kids. Andrea and I don't have kids. But I'm not a local. I'm a tourist. So I am an AP and come down a lot. But so we might have a little bit different perspectives because when I'm there, I'm almost for sure staying at a hotel. When Andrea and Joel are there, they're coming from their house. So a little bit different perspectives for us. But just wanted to put that out there. And then Joel has kids, so that adds a whole different dynamic. Although I will say, I'm going to keep rambling. I'm so sorry, viewers. Joel always talks about how he leaves the park early. But when I was at the park, I think like this was back in March, I was with Steven Leandris, and we convinced Joel. Joel said, no, I am not staying late. I will leave early no matter what happens. What ends up happening, Joel and I are eating at Tangaroa Terrace at like 11 p.m. because we convinced him to stay.
That was
so late. We closed it down.
So Joel, as much as he's talking, he leaves early. He will close it down if you beg him enough. So, all right. I'm sorry for the rambling.
Stay late sometime with me. I'll rope drop with you sometime, and then you can we'll close out the park together sometime.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, Andrew will always close the park down, and shout out to Dapper Dan, who we've had on here too. That man is a king of closing the park down. So anyways, all right. My number 5 is, I went really broad with this, but just e-ticket rides. I specifically said on there, do not go to Peter Pan and do not go to Pirates. Peter Pan is the same thing as Rise. Is you're going to be waiting an hour, and you're like Joel said, you're going to be missing out on a lot of rides during that time. The reason why you shouldn't go to Pirates, that's a 15-minute ride that is going to eat into your morning time. And on top of that, Pirates never has a long wait. I mean, granted, it might hit an hour, but it's not hard to find Pirates at 25, 30 minutes throughout the day.
Or walk on towards the evening.
Walk on with a quick moving ride. And so yeah, don't do Peter Pan. Don't do Rise, in my opinion. Don't do Space unless you're at the very front. Like I'm talking 7 a.m. crowds. Then maybe you can run to Peter Pan. But with the early morning hours, that might even be mute completely. So don't do it. So yeah, Indiana Jones, Space Mountain. If you're at DCA, Radiator Springs is not a bad one to hit, even though it can get pretty long. But it's not a bad one to hit. Soarin's not a bad one to hit. So if you like rides, hit the e-tickets, especially if they're shorter e-tickets. Don't hit the 15-minute Pirates. So that's my number 5. All right, Joel, you already touched on your number 4 a little bit. So if you want to just maybe go really brief on if you have anything else to add, or if not, we can go to Andrea.
Nope. I think I covered everything before. Let's go to Andrea.
Sweet. All right, Andrea.
Okay, I put number 4 Fantasyland, just the whole land, because the few times that I have successfully rope dropped is you can go back before all the kids get there. You can get on Pinocchio, Toad, Snow White. Casey Jr. doesn't usually have a line super early in the morning. When everything reopened, now granted it was, limited capacity that day, but also the people who were coming were showing up at opening. We did all of Fantasyland in the first hour. And we actually went to Peter Pan first, and the line wasn't too bad.
That's the one you got to judge. Like, if you're going to try to do Peter Pan first, you can go and take a look at the line. If it's already a 45-minute wait, no point in getting it now.
Yeah. If you're at the very front of those crowds, granted, again, early magic hours might completely make this all
it ruins everything.
Yeah. But if you're at the very front of that line, Peter Pan could be solid. Or if it's a low day, like Andrew said, like if it's dead that day, not a bad option. But
the Fantasyland rides are about 10-ish, because 9, 10 they get busy, and then they're busy pretty much for most of the day.
Agreed.
Even like Toad, and because they close for fireworks too, you get that gap, and where people then rush to them afterwards, so they can be they're not even reliable to be short lines late at night.
No, I agree. Unless you're for sure closing the park down at like midnight, I would 100% agree with you, Andrew, when it comes to Snow White, Pinocchio, Toads, Dumbo, for sure Dumbo, Alice, the teacups, maybe not Storybook because it is a longer ride.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, that's a 2-3 minute ride, so you're not cutting into your time, and that's going to be the only time they're walk on
You
until
do a lot
11
really
p.m.
fast.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a good one. My number 4 is, this is the opposite of my number 5, but either the Disneyland Railroad or the Main Street Vehicles. Do not do this if you only come once a year. Do not. If you're getting there to do rides, do not ride the Disneyland Railroad. Do not ride Main Street Vehicles. This only applies if you go a lot or if you're local, but there's no more magical way than to ride the railroad. I also don't love waiting like half or 20 minutes, half hour for the railroad. So I love when I can just hop on it in the morning. It's just so relaxing and peaceful. And it really just makes you realize what like the Walt in Walt Disneyland is all about. And you know, like what Walt wanted his Magic Kingdom to be. The Main Street Vehicles and the railroad in the morning are just magical. And the Main Street Vehicles stop running around 1 to 2 p.m. depending on the day. So, and I recommend everyone ride them. So the best time of the day is just to start. There's nothing more magical than just riding the horse-drawn street carriage or the omnibus down Main Street, like right as you arrive. Just really great. So that's my number 4. All right, Joel, you lead us off with our top 3.
All right, it's a food option, kind of. On your way to Thunder, if you said, you know, I really want to get Thunder out of the way, or you know, in that grouping of area, I'm going to do Thunder that morning. Stop for a breakfast chimichanga.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said that.
So Epic Beer Girl on Twitter introduced me to this, and I am forever grateful. I never really was interested. I just thought, okay, another chimichanga, you know. Oh my goodness, the thing is delectable. It like
what time did they stop selling them? That's what I need to know. What time did they stop selling them?
Well,
she told me they go until they just run out.
Correct. And on busy days they sell out quickly. There's been days where, because Jess, my wife, is literally obsessed with them. I, for record, really quick record, don't like breakfast foods and don't really like chimichangas and don't really like breakfast burritos. I have to get this every time I'm at the parks. With all that being said,
why are we friends?
I know, right?
I know. But with all that being said, I 100% agree with you, Joel. This chimichanga, in terms of like bang for your buck too, like holy crap, like a legit filling burrito for like $5-6. And I'm glad you brought this up, Joel. And they sell out quick. Some days you can get them around noon. Other days they're gone by like 9:30. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really happy you brought that up.
So yeah, that's really my number 3. It's just you can get that because it is portable. If you really want to keep going, you're on the go. You can even take it to the Thunder. Well, probably not because the line for Thunder is probably really short at that point. So maybe take it after you go on Thunder. But
but no, that works for locals and for tourists because you can either get it on the go or just sit. And
it's for those people that like there's still breakfast people. They can't just ignore it. They got to eat something. There's a good option for you. When I'm on, like, if I'm going to Disney World, I'm not eating breakfast. If I am, it's before I get to the park. But it's a whole nother story.
Normally, I don't eat breakfast, but I have to get that freaking breakfast chimichanga, man.
It's awesome.
So, Andrea, number 3.
All right, my number 3 is Peter Pan. Actually, I never ride Peter Pan because I refuse to wait in the line. So if I'm showing up to Disney that early, I'm gonna make a good, solid attempt to get in that line when it's short. Because I really just, it's always so long, and it's such a slow,
not a fun line.
No, that's one of the worst queues in the park.
Yeah, I would. So that would be like, all right, I'm here. I'm gonna try to do Peter Pan as my like one time a year ride. But that's I go all the time, so I have that luxury. But even as a tourist, I might do it if it was important to you to get Peter Pan.
I mean, most of the Fantasyland rides you can walk on or 5-10 minutes by the end of the night, like 11 p.m. late. Peter Pan's not. I mean, it's 45 until the day the park closes, the second the park closes, and it might be the worst queue, top 3 at worst, the worst queues in the park. So if you want to avoid that queue, I mean, that's to Andrea's point, just make sure you're at the front of that line if you do that. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So my number 3 is a bit biased, and this probably mostly applies to locals, not tourists. But the best part about rope dropping, or the best thing to do while rope dropping, is if there's ever a popcorn drop or some sort of limited release. I don't enjoy the hype that most of the time, the hype that comes with those. I don't enjoy that. I think it's kind of one of the not weirder, but one of the sides to the Disneyland fandom that I don't love. But with that being said, I still there's some that I have to have. I mean, my guy Elliot, just one of the coolest popcorn buckets, and so, but more so just the memories that came with it. Like I was there, we stayed at a hotel. We had like 7 people in a hotel. It was me, Andrea, Johnny, Nate, Courtney, a bunch of people, Sarah, we had like a whole hotel filled, and it was just so fun to go there and get it. And so, and plus these lines for these things are like an hour plus. finally Disneyland is starting to do the mobile orders, which thank gosh they are
so
way more enjoyable. So hopefully Disney keeps doing that because it kind of takes away from that like crappy part of it that I don't like. So yeah, if you're local and you like popcorn buckets, not as much so the process of buying it, but just the fun and the atmosphere that comes with it. Everyone's really excited and happy, and I guess that kind of applies to Rise when it was on the boarding group system. So yeah, just kind of the energy that comes with anytime, even like a new land. I don't love like waiting for a new land, but just the energy that comes with it. So anytime you can get one of those like high energy situations, it's really fun to
where everybody's
yeah. So there are bad sides to that too, but the energy is really fun. All right, top 2, Joel.
All right, number 2, I'm skipping because we already talked about it a ton. It's Peter Pan and Fantasy in the Dark Rides. But since I'm going to take this opportunity to say, have you guys seen all the stuff at the Galactic Grill in terms of sippers now?
No.
So I'm gonna run through this real quick because this goes along with your number 3. With you can get these on mobile order, at least for like the Elliott Dragon.
Oh yeah, they have the turtle too right now.
Yeah. So
really?
you want to get, you don't have to be opening, but in the AM, check it, see if it's available, so you don't have to wait in line. But look, we got the Lightyear Gauntlet that's served with a beverage. You have your light up Elliott Dragon Premium Bucket served with French fries. I don't know. Not even gonna go there. Space Mountain stainless steel bottle.
Whoa.
There's a Darth Vader premium mug. There's the light up turtle premium sipper, and then a Mandalorian stainless steel tumbler, which is pretty sweet.
That's actually insane. I didn't know. I mean, I hate on Galactic Grill all the time, but I'm glad they're leaning into that niche of like, because the best part about Galactic Grill is that they have random like cool things. Like Andrew and I went to Sweethearts Night with like a group of like 6 people.
Chicken sandwich.
Yeah, and we went and got this like retro chicken sandwich, and everyone else was like left us, and we ate it and like freaking loved it. So Galactic Grill needs to lean into those like niche things that they offer. So that's really cool, Joel. I had no clue that they even did that.
Yeah, 6 now. So anyway, that's my number 2 hot tip now.
Galactic Grill getting some love from Joel in this top 5. Wow. All right, Andrea.
All right, my number 2, and I'm gonna come back to this whole Galactic Grill French fry popcorn bucket when I get to my number 1. But is breakfast, because I love breakfast foods, and I've had the breakfast burrito, and I'm there so rarely. One of the biggest disappointments when they reopened back in spring 2021 is there was like no breakfast food served anywhere at the resort. So we were getting Starbucks breakfast every day, and I was so disappointed because I love, like, it's so exciting for me as a local who eats at these places all the time to have that different menu.
Right.
And so I get really excited about getting there early enough to have breakfast. And special shout out if you're on the other side of the resort to the Lamplight Lounge brunch, because that is the chili Achilles.
Absolutely. So yeah, to your point about different menus, Andrea, it's funny because Disneyland gets so much talk about how little amount of table service they have, but most people don't know that in the morning Plaza Inn is a character breakfast table service, and so
good too.
Yeah,
I did it one time and I loved it.
Yeah, it's great, and I'm not saying do it all the time. It's expensive and it takes a lot of your time, but just the fact that there's that unique experience. So shout out to Disneyland breakfast. Not a shout out to DCA breakfast. They are dropping the ball, and I don't include DCA brunch in there because that's more of a like later afternoon. I'm talking like early morning. Like if you road trip DCA, your breakfast options are sorely limited, and they really especially with the no park hopping rules, they got to get that fixed. It's like actually like legitimately like not good how little amount of options they have. So, but Disneyland is killing it. All right, my number 2 is New Orleans Square. When I think rope drop, for whatever reason, I think New Orleans Square. This can work a little bit if you're a tourist and you want to like hit like Haunted Mansion without a long wait. But I wouldn't really recommend rope dropping this land. I just think it's so magical in the morning. This is a land that really fills up with crowds basically all day and all night with Fantasmic, and so it's really hard to enjoy the land for what it is. And the Imagineers purposely built the land pretty small, which I'm glad they did. So if you want to experience this land how it was meant to be with no crowds, the morning's the best time to do it. And just sitting on the rivers of America, with just in the morning, it's just magical. And the chimichanga's right there, to Joel's point. So New Orleans Square is what I think of when I think of rope drop, just magical right on the rivers of America, exploring the little streets with no wait. So that's my shout out for number 2. All right, number 1.
All right, I kind of talked about this one. I was leading into it. So it's an old school number 1. Not that old school, but like let's say 1995. Because I'm gonna say it's just you should just do Indy, and here's
Yeah.
why.
Ooh,
Here's why I'm still an Indy fan, especially for opening. One,
love
it breaks
Indy.
down all the time,
yes, it does.
so it still breaks down all the time. At least you can get there and hopefully have no wait. But there is something to be said about. I'm gonna get like not emotional, but I don't know. The warm morning glow coming through the
Mhm.
bamboo as you're
Oh,
walking up the ramp,
I'm
and
ready
it's
to cry.
quiet. You have the sounds of like the animal sounds and the radio pumping in through the truck right there. You go up the bamboo, you go inside, and then you hear like ding ding, like the little noises inside the cavern, and it's just so peaceful and just you've escaped. And then you walk in, and you walk all the way through the queue. There's no line whatsoever, and it's just perfect. And it's a great. It's still a wonderful attraction. And then as you exit in that morning, it's still you walk by the water's glistening along the jungle cruise, and you hear like the motors running, and then you walk out, and the walkways are still clear because it's usually it's a 5-minute ride. Get on within 10 minutes. I say Indy's the way to go.
Can you just keep talking, Joel, please?
No, that was so good. Why did we let him go first?
I'm literally about to cry. I'm crying in the club right now.
I know. You painted that picture so well. Wow.
That was incredible.
Exactly. Like I felt
The
like I
second you
was there.
started talking, I could just picture it in my mind.
Oh, yeah, totally. I don't know if I've ever done early morning Indy. I'm a like
I
late
don't think
night.
I have.
Yeah.
To this day, I think Indy's the only ride I've never waited in the outdoor queue for, because we either did it
Oh.
when there's no fast pass and you breeze through it, or you just
Mhm.
fast pass Genie it. So yeah, I don't think I've ever waited outdoor in that queue, and now I want to go do it. I'm going to be there in a couple days, and I think I might go do that, Joel. Thank you, sir.
There you go. You're welcome.
All right,
All
Andrew.
right,
I don't
my
think you can talk
number
now,
one.
but you can try.
My number one is Space Mountain. I love Space
Mhm.
Mountain, and I feel like it's consistently of all the big e-ticket like classic rides, it has the longest line.
Yeah,
So
especially
even
now with Lightning Lane.
yeah, so even when so we rope dropped for the popcorn bucket and the sipper, the Elliot and the turtle. We mobile ordered those the day that they came out. We rushed in, we picked up our mobile orders at Galactic Grill. So we had like I had like 4 servings of French fries at like 8:30
And you had to bring me
a.m.
one.
to eat.
You had to bring me one out of the park.
Yeah, I had to get some for Sean. I had like a Diet Coke to go with one of the sippers and a bottle of water. So I've got all these fries and soda, and it's like 8:30 in the morning, and we just like sat there and ate it, and then we headed to space, and it was like maybe 8:30, 8:45, and I was surprised because this is like a half an hour wait for space, and a half an hour wait for Space Mountain is like that's good.
Yep.
I mean, I think if you rush there, you're gonna get that like 5-10 minute wait. But like for the morning that we had with trying to get the sippers and stuff to get to space and only wait 30 minutes, like when regularly it's between 60 and 90 was pretty awesome. It felt so exciting to start the day off with Space Mountain too.
Yeah.
Something I love, but I don't do as often because I don't like to wait in lines.
In terms of big e-tickets to rope drop, that might be like, just in terms of like practicality, it might be number one, because
So
Indy's a good
too.
one too, but Indy has a really long queue. Space has a fairly short queue, at least when it comes to big e-tickets, and it's a short, quick ride. And yeah, like Andrea said, I mean, that thing sits at 60 plus now with Lightning Lane all day, even into closing time. And so unless you want to hop in right at like midnight, yeah, good luck, waiting for that ride. So I like that, Andrew. I think it might be the best ride to rope drop, and the energy going there, like the energy in Tomorrowland, I think I touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
Like going to space it's fun to experience for sure.
Yeah.
Whereas like, energy to go to Peter Pan, it just feels like people are throwing left hooks at each other. They're like running and tripping each other and cussing each other
My
out.
4-year-old's gonna get on this first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Peter Pan is like a 75-second ride. Like it's so fast.
Right. So Peter Pan or so Space, I like that. That's a good one, Andrea.
And
It's not quite as emotional as Indy, but still a great one.
Yeah, but you always come off like I never come off Space Mountain without a huge smile on my face,
Yep.
And at the end of the day, like Disneyland makes us happy. That's why we go there, And so I think like just those rides that like no matter how bad of a day you're having, whatever, if they're gonna leave me feeling happy and energetic when I get off, that's what I'm going to Disneyland for.
Absolutely. And when it comes to hour-long queues, there are probably 20 different rides that I would rather wait in terms of the queue for than the freaking Starcade upstairs, or even worse if it's so long that you're outside, to Joel's point earlier, with no shade. Like, and then you get into the tight queues and you know you're about to catch COVID. Like, just
it's so hot.
They move the merge to lower there.
Yeah. And so like Indy, I don't mind, I'll wait for that ride because the queue is so nice. Or like even Rise, like that, the queue is part of the ride. Racers even is not a bad, not a horrible wait, but Space, man, I just waiting for that ride sucks. So even more points to Andrea's rope dropping point. So yeah, it's a good one. My number one, a pretty broad one, but just people watching. Whether you're on Main Street, or I wouldn't recommend this to tourists, but if you're a local, just even riding in the monorail from downtown, like, you don't get to walk through Main Street, but it's a great place to people watch, like, or just like sitting down, like maybe eating at Carnation Cafe, or just sitting somewhere on Main Street, just watching these people come in who are just so excited to have the best day of their life. And like, just thinking back to when you did not get to go to Disneyland that much, or when you were a kid and like Disneyland was like unobtainable, and just seeing that, like, the emotion on these people's faces. And so people watching in the morning, people watching anytime is fun, but like around 4 p.m. people watching, you're kind of seeing Uncle Joe like punching his neighbor and like really angry, and like, Mama Sally is screaming at all 5 of her kids that they're never coming
Mama
back.
Sally.
So so people watching in the morning, like, that magic is not rubbed off yet. People aren't fighting yet, and so it's just magical, man. Like, just seeing people walk down Main Street in the morning is one of the greatest things you can do at a Disney park. So that's my number one. All right. Thank you, everyone, for that list. I feel like we covered from the abstract to the specific to the emotional to the practical, everything. We kind of got the whole gamut there. So let us know down in the comments what you guys agree and disagree with. With that being said, we will hop into our fourth topic and our final topic with our guest of honor, Mr. Tangaroa Joel. Joel, the floor is kind of yours here. I guess, I talk a little bit about your podcast, Off Harbor in Maine, and how you got started there, but really just, maybe touch on your theme park story. What made you fall in love with theme parks? What made you fall in love with Disney? How you ended up, just doing what you're doing today in terms of your love of the theme park. So, the floor is yours. Talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. I've talked about this on the podcast before, and sometimes I feel like I've said this a little too many times because it's kind of, it's not cliche. It's just kind of cheesy, I think. But hey, I grew up in Sacramento area, and I wouldn't go down to Disneyland too often. And when I did go down, it was a big event, right? For most of us, or most probably even watching this video. But it was an event, and I have such great memories of that. But I only went down a couple of times. Then when I became a teenager, I became like, I'm too cool for Disney. Like, I'm not going to tell my friends in high school that I like Disneyland. That's for losers, And so I started to go that route. If we had Marine World, which turns into Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, and we had Great America up there, and those were more turned into my thing. I'm all about roller coasters, of course, the teenager thing. And then I had a buddy, Harrison Hightower 2, I think his number is, but Harrison Hightower, I think number 2 on Twitter.
No way, that's your buddy?
I grew up with him. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Maybe he's been on Discord for a while, but either he just recently followed me, or I recently started.
Recently too.
I was like, oh, a new guy to Dis Twitter, cool.
He's been quiet on social media, and I think he prefers it that way, or his presence, if you will. Kind of secretive, it seems like. Well, I think he prefers it that way. So. But he was a good friend of mine. Still is a good friend of mine. But what?
That's crazy. That's like two worlds colliding in my head right now.
Yeah. So at lunch table in high school, him and another friend of mine, they would talk about these trips to Disneyland. Sorry for running long, but he talked about these trips going to Disneyland, and they started talking about the fireworks. And keep in mind, this is cool Jewel at the time, at 15 or 16 maybe. And I was not that cool. I was in band, but that comes in the story later. So they're talking about, hey, we just got back from Disneyland. Oh, they got this great fireworks show, but they started making fun of it, but teasing it in a way that, like, because they love it. And so they were talking about believe, there's magic in the stars. And then they started doing because it's pretty cheesy, but it's amazing at the same time. I'm like, oh, and I was laughing with them because they were making fun of the kid talking about, all you gotta do is believe and stuff. And And so anyways, I finally go with band. We walk down Main Street, march down Main Street in the band. And I finally see Believe. There's Magic in the Stars. From that moment on, that was it. I was like, I get it now.
Cool Joel
when I
ended
saw
that
those
day.
fire, what's that?
Cool Joel ended that day.
Yeah, there was no more cool Joel. I was like, okay,
cooler.
Yeah. But that's what did it. It did it for me. I realized everything from that one show, what Disney was all about, and seeing the synchronized fireworks to the story and the emotion that was brought on from those fireworks did it all for me. And so from that day on, that's when I just got into Disney. I started joining discussion forums back in those days. Like laughingplace.com was really big in the early 2000s. That's where I met a lot of my friends. All of my friends from the podcast are met through laughingplace.com, and we've stayed friends ever since. And yeah, that's my story. And then finally we've always joked about wanting to have having a podcast. And Matt likes to rant and complain about things. And I'm like, oh, this would be good. We should talk about this stuff and just be silly on it. And finally, COVID happened and it made sense. Like, hey, if we're not doing anything else, let's try to get this going, even though we couldn't go to the parks. And I finally pulled the trigger and we started Off Harbor in Maine, and we have a lot of fun with it. And it's kind of I wouldn't say a passion project, but it's definitely a project of like just a lot of love and labor goes into it. Labor of love, right?
Absolutely.
So that's my story. I moved down here for college and ended up staying down here. Were we going to talk about top attractions or no?
Well, I just wanted you to touch on, Joel, our viewers need to know about the moment you needed to film for your other podcast, not your podcast, but your Sounds of Disney. I forget what it's called.
Park Sensory.
Thank you. Yeah. You need to tell your viewers about how you had to film for Park Sensory. But Andrea and I really wanted to hang out with you. And Andrea and I were at the parks. And my wife was off shopping. And I think Beth and Matt and maybe Derek too, or maybe it's just Beth and Matt or someone else had gone out to DCA. And us three were hanging out. But you had to film for Park Sensory, and you specifically told Andrew and I that we could not talk while we were on the team because you had to film for Park Sensory. So Andrea and I just gave you dirty looks the entire Mark Twain ride.
It was awesome. Yeah, I needed to redo my audio recording, so it's my side hustle. No, it's we have a complimentary podcast, if you will, to Off Harbor Maine, but it's really just it's Off Harbor Presents, but it's really its own entity. It's Park Sensory. And all I do is I record binaural audio from the parks. I was trying to get quite a few on there. I have a good amount so far, and I something I just keep building to it. And it's really just audio tracks of either walking around the park, walking through Adventureland, just getting the different sounds through the land, then complete ride-throughs. I have like Disneyland Forever fireworks there. And you can find those audio tracks like on YouTube. You can get the full source audio. Those are great too. And then sometimes it's just, I feel like really brings you into the moment if you can hear a little bit of the crowd chatter or some other natural ambient sounds of the park. And by no means, this is not anything no one else has done. There's other things out there, but I just hope what I'm contributing is just adding to the community and more songs or sounds that you can download, and I have it available so you can download on any streaming service. You don't have to just listen to it on the podcast. But yeah, we went to Mark Twain, and I was like, hey, I have to redo this. If you don't mind, I'm going to go stand over here. Don't talk to me as I record.
All jokes aside, although he actually did say that to Andrew and I, all jokes aside, no, it's great stuff, Joel. And I agree that a lot of people are doing that. But in terms of like recently, I mean, I watch a lot of Disney YouTube, and like Fresh Baked used to do a little bit of it and still does. And fantastic stuff, by the way. Everyone make sure you subscribe to Fresh Baked. But there's not a whole lot of people, Joel, doing that out there. And yours is one of the best. I mean, I listened to every single one. You just posted one, or at least it went live a couple days ago. And like the second I got the notification, I had to listen to it. And I mean, even if you don't listen to that stuff right away, like just download it, save it for later. I mean, it's just fantastic stuff. And so, I mean, there might be other people doing it out there. And shout out to whoever's doing it. Like I'm all for, the whole point of this podcast is bringing people together. So whoever's doing that out, in the community, let it know down in the comments. I would love to do it. But yours is one of the best, Joel. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to that too.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you very much. And again, I am definitely, I'm learning as we go. I think there's, it could always be better, and hopefully I can continue to improve it. But I'm having a lot of fun doing it and finding new things to record.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, that's awesome, Joel. Yeah. Thank you so much. So the last topic, number 5, this is supposed to be the surprise ranking, but you and I have been talking about this podcast for so long that I actually already accidentally told you the topic number 5. So sorry to all my past guests, but Joel's going to be more prepared here than most. But yeah, Joel, we'll put you on the hot seat here. We need in order. And since you've already had time to think about this, you get no time here. You got to answer right away. In order, from third to second to first, your favorite theme park attractions of all time that you've ridden. And then after that, your number 1 ride that you've never ridden that you want to the most. That can be another country or a ride that hasn't opened yet or just a ride you haven't gotten to yet.
All right. Number 3, Tokyo Disneyland's Pooh's Honey Hunt. Without a doubt. And it's not, and I'm going to say something really quick about it. It's not like the best attraction ever, but it's the attraction that you wouldn't expect to be so amazing, right? Because it's a trackless ride system. All of animatronics are just as good as an e-ticket here on the state side, but it's one of those attractions, even knowing that it's supposed to be pretty good, you go into like, dang, this is a great attraction. So it's a true e-ticket over there, and it's fantastic. Number 2, Disneyland Pirates of the Caribbean.
Ooh.
It's just mine. I know Matt's not a huge fan of it. I mean, you've been on 1,000 times. I get it. But for me, it's nostalgia, the smell of the water, and it is great to be in the AC, and it is just a quality all-around good attraction, right?
So many animatronics, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the history and everything. And number 1, without a doubt, for me, is Walt Disney World's or MGM Studios or Hollywood Studios Tower of Terror. And it's really because it came out at the right time for me. It was the thrill attraction when it debuted, and I got to go there right after it opened. But I personally like the Fifth Dimension section a ton, even though I know it's not that great. But I like the fact that you board an elevator, you go up first, you don't move backwards first, like you did in California Metro, and you do in Paris, even in Tokyo, you go backwards first. And then, but you went up and then you go forward into this totally weird room. But really what sets it apart from everything else is I just like, as soon as you walk in through those gates, the mist, the sounds, or that scary, echoey, early 1900s or 1930s music. But you're right next to Rock and Roller Coaster and that little area, which has really loud music down there. You can't see it at all. There's a nice little hill there. You feel like you're going up a hill. Yeah, you're really immersed. And the fact that you unload in a different area and then you're all these things I really enjoy. And it's so weird. You like back up and you go sideways and you unload. Awesome. So cool. It's definitely my favorite attraction.
That's amazing. Well, before you get to your number 1, Andrew, I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, we just wrote this together like a couple months ago, and we had such a fun experience. We had a great cast member who just kept coming to everybody in the pre-show and standing really creepily right next to
in the pre-show room.
And Sean knows, because I talk about this all the time. It's one of the things I love most about Disney World is loading and unloading in different spots. It just makes it so much more magical. She's like, oh, where are we now? It preserves that sense of mystery a little bit more than so many of the Disneyland rides. So
yeah, for sure. And Joel, this is my 11th episode of this podcast, and all 3 of your answers I don't think have ever been shared before. I mean, most American guests have not been able to visit Tokyo Disney, and so obviously, and Pooh's Honey Hunt sounds like just an incredible ride, just in terms of what they've done with a small scale dark ride. And then Pirates just does not get enough love. I mean, that's in my top 5 at worst, if not higher, at Disneyland Pirates. And so I'm glad you gave it love, because that does not get enough love, especially among locals. True. And and then Tower of Terror, which, I mean, granted, that one's pretty common in most people's top 3, but it just doesn't get enough love because it's been around for so long or whatever reason. And so just fantastic list for sure.
Are we going?
Yeah,
this is supposed to be right. We're going number 1 ride I want to experience.
Yeah, that you've never been on.
It's going to be Shanghai's Pirates.
Yes,
I gotta experience. I've seen 1,000 point of views. I just need to experience it in person. I just like that it's completely different. It's unique, and it just looks epic.
Absolutely. Our guest last week, Vash Guy, said that had the same answer, and someone else like week 2 or 3 had the same answer, and I think that's my answer as well. So,
my honorable mentions would be Phantom Manor and Mystic Manor. But
yes, for sure. The only one of those I have been able to visit is Phantom Manor. I just got to ride that a couple months ago, and I, for whatever reason, didn't have that high of expectations going in. I don't know why. I knew it was going to be great, but had low expectations and was absolutely blown away. So I'm hoping my low expectations don't, affect my love for that ride, but just insane, just absolutely insane. So yeah, and Mystic Manor, I really want to ride too. So really good list. All right. Well, Joel, thank you so much for joining me, or joining us. Andrea, obviously co-host, the second or the tied for first most popular co-host. I have to say, Karika's a great co-host, but Andrea, I think she might be the most asked for. But anyways, Joel, thank you so much for joining us. It's great having you on here, hearing your thoughts. And yeah, I just got to say, Joel, you're the rope drop king. But one of my best experiences at a theme park with you was closing the park down. We were with King Dakar, Karik, and we were with Steven and Sailor Elijah. And we had a big group. I think Shay, I think we had like even more than 3 or 4 other people. My wife was there. That was one of the funnest nights. We just had Cars Land to ourselves, and we rode Cars Land and had the strangest interaction with the CM that I've ever had in my life. And just so strange. We'll share that another day. And yeah, just had Cars Land to ourselves, and then closed the park down at Tango Terrace. So great time.
I'm not against the night. I'm not against closing the park. I just enjoy going opening too.
Different parameters in your life.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. And Andrea, I feel like Andrea, I've always closed the park down with you all the time. When we're at the parks, we're closing the park down. But we had that one rope drop, experience, and then you rope dropped when you went to Disneyland when it first opened, right? You were with like Sincerely Ivy and a couple others.
Yeah.
So as much as Andrea says she doesn't love rope dropping and Joel loves rope dropping, they'll do the opposite as well sometimes. So
yeah, that's true.
But awesome. All right. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. So Andrea, really quickly, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
All right. At Andrea Jessica on Twitter, and on Instagram, it's at Andrea Runs 2DL.
Awesome. And Mr. Joel?
It's at Tango Joel. You can also find my podcast at the at Park Sensory one, which is at Park_Sensory, and then Off Harbor is at Off Harbor.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, if you're following this podcast, you probably already follow both these awesome people. But if you don't already follow them, make sure you follow them, and make sure you subscribe to Off Harbor in Maine. With that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Peace.